He bought it for 1.2 million. And so for people who are listening and cannot see the screen, Wes is showing an article. Justin Bieber's Bored Ape has lost more than $1.2 million in value, which is 95% of its total value. So I guess he bought it for 1.3 million. And then one interesting thing is that all Bored Ape NFTs have lost value over the last year, which is not surprising considering that all NFTs have lost value. But most Bored Ape NFTs, I think, have dropped, like 40-50% and not 95%.
There was a really good comment which was saying a lot of these NFT projects had promised community, that when you're buying the NFT, you're not just buying the NFT to show people that you own, kind of like a flex or like a Rolex to say, here's, some ostentatious purchase that I have. But you're also going to get invited to these Bored Ape Yacht Club events. You're going to be able to talk, just with people that own this NFT. So there's like an exclusivity aspect to it. But it seems during the bear market, some of these projects they have not been fulfilling that community build out as much as they might have in the past. So it's almost like when you have a bull market in certain, let's say Ethereum or Bitcoin rise maybe 100%, you might have these new projects that are trying new things. NFTs might rise at 200%. They might do even better than the market and create some alpha. But then it feels like in the bear market, they do much worse as well. They're sort of subject to the highs and the low swings. All right, Ishan, welcome. Episode 7. Good to see you.
7. Yeah, this has been great. A lot of fun.
Well, I'm glad to keep it going. I think you put together a tremendous agenda for today. We've got action-packed content for us. We've got Justin Bieber talking about NFTs. We've got collapse of the crypto bubble, according to Brookings. We've got Bluesky is wildly successful thanks to Jack Dorsey and their crew. BlackRock CEO, he is having a turn of opinion about Bitcoin, and we can chat about Veggie from last week. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, sounds good. No, I think you got it.
Maybe you should kick us off then. Give us some context. It sounds like Justin Bieber is in the news around NFTs.
Yeah. So funny story about Justin Bieber. So I think he's a great musician, but I went to the Holocaust Museum a long time ago. This must have been, 2013, 14, 15, something like that. It's been a while. And, you go through the Holocaust Museum, or I think it's like the Anne Frank Museum. And like, there are a lot of people who write like things about Anne Frank. They like, the letters, the diaries that she wrote really like inspired a lot of people. And Justin Bieber goes, I believe if Anne Frank was alive today, she'd be a believer. And I was like, what? Of course, This is young Justin Bieber, right? Justin Bieber is probably, he's my, so he's in his early 30s now. So he probably wrote that in his early 20s. But I was like, dude shows up to that museum. I was like, I think she'd be a believer.
That's so bad. Yeah. We've all done stupid things that we regret at that age, but when you're famous like that, it's there and people care and they notice it.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of it, but okay. So maybe he's not the most tasteful historian in the world,
but he's a fantastic musician. And so the story is that he bought a Bored Ape NFT, right? For 1.2 million. I believe it was this February or was it last February? I think it was 522 or February he bought it. Probably 522. He bought it for 1.2 million. And so for people who are listening and cannot see the screen, Wes is showing an article. Justin Bieber's Bored Ape has lost more than $1.2 million in value, which is 95% of its total value. So I guess he bought it for 1.3 million. And then one interesting thing is that all Bored Ape NFTs have lost value over the last year, which is not surprising considering that all NFTs have lost value. But most Bored Ape NFTs, I think, have dropped, like 40-50% and not 95%. And then I think, Wes, are you showing the market cap of the Bored Ape coin, or are you sure? What is this exactly?
Yeah, it's a good call out. One of the things that I found that was different about the NFT pricing is that a lot of times they will track the floor price, like what is the least expensive NFT in that
Oh,
class that you can buy. And this is a
I
graph
see.
that's showing, looks like back in May, April of last year, the lowest price you could pay for a Bored Ape was about 128 Ethereum, and now
Oh,
it's about
wow.
34 Ethereum.
Wow. And of course, like, it's good that they do this in like crypto native or like cryptocurrency prices, but like everyone always wants to know what that equates to USD because the price of the price of ETH to USD is also dropped, right? So just because it's 2034 or whatever it is today doesn't mean like in USD that price is the same. But yeah, so it's interesting that like, the people who bought the Bored Ape NFTs like really early and still made like massive profits, right? And but yeah, so it was just interesting that like the news got like, oh, Justin Bieber's NFT has gone down, right? Because it's easy to pick a celebrity, and just like people are reporting, oh, Tom Brady has lost $30 million in FTX scandal, etc., right? But I think it just actually talks more to like the broader NFT market more than anything. And then when I say NFTs, I really, really hate how we always talk about NFT art and not like, Benji was on last week. He talked about NFT IPs, right? We talked about NFTs being used for airplane tickets. I have a whole list of things that I think NFTs are going to change that I'm super excited about. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this? Like, general NFT art decline, Justin Bieber's Bored Ape dropping 95% in value, and Bored Ape in general dropping like, the class dropping 50, 60, 70% in value.
There was a really good comment that I heard from a commentator, which was saying a lot of these NFT projects had promised community. That when you're buying the NFT, you're not just buying the NFT to show people that you own, kind of like a flex or like a Rolex to say, here's
Mm-hmm.
some ostentatious purchase that I have. But you're also going to get invited to these Bored Ape Yacht Club events. You're going to be able to talk, just with people that own this NFT. So there's like an exclusivity aspect to it. But it seems during the bear market, some of these projects they have not been fulfilling that community build out as much as they might have in the past. So it's almost like when you have a bull market in certain, let's say Ethereum or Bitcoin rise maybe 100%, let's say in a simple bull market scenario, you might have these new projects that are trying new things. NFTs might rise at 200%. They might do even
Mm-hmm.
better than the market and create some alpha. But then it feels like in the bear market, they do much worse as well. They're sort of subject to the highs and the low swings.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you think of NFTs as art, like in this case, we're talking about art, we're talking about images, right? It seems that like when the market is doing really well, you know, really rich people want to pay high amounts of dollars, record breaking amounts for a Van Gogh or a Picasso or, the Constitution, right? The Citadel CEO bought that Constitution for $43 million. But when things are not going well, you don't hear the same stories. And I think that's true. That seems to be true in the NFT market, which is a lot more like riskier. People were like buying and selling NFTs for, profit instead of like owning a cool piece of art, right? And showcasing that art. So when that stuff happens, like I think the rug really gets pulled out underneath. But do you want to go a little bit into like the Bored Ape Yacht Club history and Yuga Labs history and stuff like that?
Let's definitely do that. Yeah, let's hit that. And let's also just kind of talk about like what an NFT is to begin with. And also I'm curious to hear your thoughts on use cases.
Yuga Labs started Bored Ape. What's interesting is that they were all like anonymous, and a BuzzFeed article actually outed like two of the four founders. And they've made like 10,000 of these, whatever, Bored Ape NFTs. And they were working on other stuff. They were like working on some games. They were working on the company's name comes from a villain in a game that controls adversaries into 2D art. They were working on a bunch of stuff. And I think the NFT became like just something that really took off. It's just a bunch of friends working on it. I don't know, Wes, do you have more context or more info?
Yeah, you're exactly right. This was during DeFi summer or leading up to DeFi summer, I believe. It was at 2020, 2021. Crypto was coming out of its big bear market. And these guys said, well, there's an NFT token standard. We can do some interesting things. We can generate unique art as a result of combinations of attributes in these tokens. And this artwork, like these Bored Apes, Bored Ape Yacht Club, Bored Apes, they are generated by a combination of features. So let's say if you're an artist, you come up with maybe 100 pictures of apes, and then 4 or 5 different hats they could wear or facial expressions they could create. And then some server generates those, combination. I think it's like maybe 10,000 or however many like full combinations there are. And so then they mint them. They actually create them as records on the Ethereum token. And really all they're doing at that point is they're creating records on the Ethereum network that say, there is some token that can be sent between Ethereum wallets, and that token has a pointer to a file that's stored on a server effectively. And that file that's stored on a server happens to be, a JPEG, an image. And so that's kind of where it all comes from. And I think it's a fun fun project for them to start, literally for the kicks of it. At that point it's art, you're having fun, nothing serious. But then when it starts, bringing in millions of dollars, then it becomes much more serious. So, good for them for at least giving it a try. At the time, just saying like, we're going to have some fun with this and see where it goes. And it turns out their timing was excellent to meet the market.
Yeah, exactly. And I think art is a great use case of NFTs, right? I think there was a bunch of scams, not with Bored Ape Yacht Club, but in general, there were some scams where people were like, what it does is it points to a server, right? Like the Ethereum record points to a server. When you change the file on the server, like the Ethereum record doesn't know, right? Like the on the blockchain. So then people started using NFT.storage or IPFS basically to actually store the actual NFT content, whatever it was, a ticket, a piece of art, music, etc., so that you can actually refer back to the IPFS CID and the IPFS, which is the hash for people who are familiar with IPFS, the cryptographic hash when something is stored on or pinned on IPFS, and put that into the actual record on the blockchain, right? So you have the record of the IPFS CID, and then you have to where it points on IPFS, and that's like double security, or I guess, whatever, more secure than the previous version. But yeah, I don't know too much about Bored Ape Yacht Club. It was really cool. I thought the visual design of the images were beautiful. I thought they were super cool, but I was not willing to spend, 20 ETH on one. So I never got one.
Yes. Well, it seems like you may have made the right decision from a financial services perspective. But no, there's a lot of opportunity. Folks are using it in the future for like access to events or access to, there's one project, Nevermind.io, which is focused on using NFTs to give you access to private data sets. So if you want to run machine learning algorithms, the NFT is your ticket to get access to something rather than logging in through your Google credentials or creating an account. So the idea of having a unique record on the blockchain that you own still has some space to explore potential use cases. And maybe this is just kind of like a funny first, demo of what it can do, and people come up with more interesting uses in the future. What do you think, Ishan? Do you have any opinions about use cases?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is that the financialization of something is always like the first application of technology. I don't know how many people know this, but computers were used first in finance, especially in trading and high frequency trading, and they were used anywhere before. Like machine learning, statistical methods was used there before. Machine learning was used there before. Deep learning was used there before, right? Like obviously not large language models because those were recently invented, but it seems that people get super excited about, using technology and money combination. And same thing with crypto, right? Like one of the things that I have not been a fan of is that, one thing that has helped crypto is that like price has got, like there were these massive crypto booms, but it also has not, because recently, I've been talking to a lot of people in tech, and people who didn't get into crypto ever, or were, didn't go work at Web3 companies. They are like, that crypto is failing or Web3 is failing. They make fun of it. They're like, I went to a party recently and, multiple times. And when that happened for all the people who were not in crypto, but were in tech, they were like, yeah, I didn't get it. This is stupid, right? Like crypto will never take off, or, like teasing me for joining protocol labs and stuff like that. Right. So it's quite interesting.
Okay.
Right. Like, and I think and some of it is justified, right? So a lot of the crypto scams happen.
Yeah.
But a part of it is that like everything was revolving around money and the value of something, in terms of like how much does this NFT cost? And like, the cool thing about NFTs is not just related to like trading art on OpenSea, right? There are going to be really cool use cases. We talked about NFT IP last week with and Decentralized Science with Benji. We've spoken about NFTs being like the way that people get access to some sort of content, right? Get access to, Nevermind uses NFTs to get access to their data. There are people who are using NFTs to get access to like insider content for artists. So, there's airlines in South America or Latin America using NFTs as tickets, right? We've spoken about that on the pod. So there's a lot of use cases that of NFTs are going to come out, some that we haven't even thought about, right? So I'm super bullish on the whole NFT thing, but like, if you think about all these use cases, they're not going to be like, oh, NFTs and that are being traded all the time for some amount of money that's in the news and like record breaking NFT sold. Most 99% of these are not going to be like that, right? They're going to fold into everyday technology. A lot of people are going to be using apps. They won't even know it's an NFT, right? Except, there might be a few extra features and people will be like, oh, how did they do that technically? And it turns out they use an NFT, right? If for example, if you're a passenger on this airplane, why would you care if your ticket is an NFT or not, right? Like maybe, your app says you get on this flight, you get on the flight. And if the only cool thing is like they create a marketplace in the app for you to sell your ticket, you're like, oh, I just sold my ticket, but you don't know if it's an NFT or not, right? But
you're not sitting at the airplane terminal. Hold on, I need to reload my wallet, my hardware wallet at home. I'm trying to import my root seed. Hold on. No, you're right. Yeah, back-end plumbing, which is good because at the end of the day, Web3 needs good back-end plumbing. So maybe it'll find its place back there.
Well, what are your thoughts on like, NFTs aside from this crazy art market and, all the speculation that was happening?
I think it has a lot of potential. I'm really excited about the IP NFT in particular, like the idea of integrating it with the legal system as like a framework of ownership of some unique asset. But my question or concern, even like, for in case of like a Bored Ape Yacht Club, is there being some history of court cases to uphold ownership of an NFT. Like, how does a court recognize if someone has disagreement over, I own that flight ticket on an NFT versus other person owned a flight ticket over NFT? Will a court say, this person owned the wallet? That, once you start putting like, could you put real estate behind an NFT? Like, how big could the asset itself go, and how would that stand up in any kind of court? The only challenge right now, we just don't have a lot of court cases where the court cases revolved around who actually owned the NFT. But then again, like the other thing about crypto is like, as more value goes into this digital realm of the blockchain space, there's sort of a question of how much do you care about the real world and what it's, what the court system's doing. Whereas if your value is on the blockchain, you care in some ways more about what the blockchain ledger says and what that, where it says the value exists in some sense. So I'm glad that people are giving it a try. I was just chatting with a startup the other day that's working on some financialization of NFTs. They are trying to do unique auction pricing for NFTs. So kind of taking things that happened in DeFi, trading limit orders, and using that for NFT markets, because the NFT markets traditionally have just been like very simplistic buyer-seller auctions. So there's a lot of sort of financialization work to be done there. But the other interesting use case, have you heard about this concept of soul-bound tokens?
Yeah, I don't know what they are.
There was a paper that came out with Vitalik Buterin, and let me just do a quick search so I get the name of the to credit the right folks. It's called Decentralized Society, and the people who wrote it were Pooja Olhaver, Glenn Weil, who's an economist and has written a lot about quadratic funding, and then Vitalik Buterin. But the premise is that as you accomplish certain things in the real world, that you should have a way of attributing those accomplishments to you as an individual, not necessarily your hardware wallet, but you as a person. And so maybe in some sense, you have a wallet that's associated with you as a person, your soul. So for example, if you go and you are given a graduate degree in bioinformatics,
Mhm.
that accomplishment to be associated with you individually, that's a token that attributes to you. And so then when you come to your identity in the Ethereum world and you want to buy, sell something, you want to interact in a commercial sense, if you have a soul-bound token, this is something that is just unique to you. It's an attribute of what you've accomplished, almost like POAPs and those sorts of things, like attributing what you are, what you've done. Because a lot of people are interested in identity online, whatever, even if
Right.
it's your real identity or your pseudo identity, and sort of
Yeah.
attributing more quality and characteristics, just like your resume in some sense,
Mhm.
bringing that into the blockchain world is another area that shows some promise. But what do you think? Would you be willing to have a soul-bound token for your work experience?
Yeah, why not? Right now with my LinkedIn, I don't know, is it better or worse? I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, what problem am I solving, right? Like, what do I want to showcase to the world? Um, like, how is it better than LinkedIn? If it was like worked better than LinkedIn, did a better job of showing off to the world, like what I did and built a network, right? I mean, at the end of the day, that's the thing, right? Like, what problem is it solving for me? I don't know too much about soulbound tokens, so I can't comment on like, they're great or they're not great, but from a product and use case perspective, if something can do a better job than LinkedIn on like what my accomplishments are and have they been verified. But like question is, how do you like verify these things, right? Who's doing the verification? Also, like, you know, people like want to simplify their LinkedIn, or what they do is a lot of times they write like, you've been at a company for 5 years, and then you write like whatever your highest title was, right? There's like a lot of freedom on LinkedIn to like express, like have people perceive you the way that you want to be perceived. But yeah, I think if there was a way that, did this on chain, I would definitely be interested. It's just, again, what problem is it solving for me? Um,
Yeah, it would definitely try to tie in somewhat to like the IP NFT that Benji was
mhm.
describing. So if there was a professor who was going to come up with some novel research for a novel disease, and you were, checking them out on some marketplace, deciding whether or not you wanted to invest in a token for that IP NFT to help fund that research. If you could see more information that proved, yes, this person has credentials, they've been a professor for this long, they've done this research, other things, then it could potentially reduce some friction in the process of deciding to invest in that person. What should we chat about the crypto bubble?
Yeah. Yeah. So I read an interesting article. It says job listings tumble as much as 80% in, US major cities. Of course, it being clickbait as it is, if you actually look in, it's mostly 30 to 40% in all the cities. And it's like 80% in Reno and 80% in Las Vegas. And I'm like, there weren't enough crypto jobs for that to be like statistically significant, and first and second of all, Reno is not a major city. I mean, no offense to Reno. It's a great place, but like, when you think about major cities, you talk about big populations with large economies, right? So I
Yeah.
it just seems that people are taking shots at crypto when like as they can, like this came out of Fortune crypto, right? In DC, it's -5%. In Tampa, it's -78%. Dallas, -72%. So I guess there are a couple cities that do reach nearly 80, but in SF, it's -40. In New York, it's -36. So, it's more like 30 to 45%. Yeah, exactly.
You're right. No, it's like how many people are having conversations, and for the folks listening, we're sharing this chart that I'll put in the show notes here, which is kind of a visualization of these cities, how much they've lost in crypto jobs. But like thinking back about the past year and all the people I met in crypto, I don't recall very many conversations where people were saying, "Hey, I really want to get into crypto," and someone saying, "You should move to Las Vegas. If you move to Las Vegas,
Yeah.
you can make it." And then someone else in the room saying, "No, no, 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 don't move to Vegas. Reno is where the real action is in crypto." Not not even the case.
Yeah.
It's not even the United States for that purpose.
I know.
I'm willing to bet you that half of the people that left those cities with crypto jobs are living in Portugal right now, or another
Portugal,
crypto
yeah.
friendly place in Europe,
Singapore,
Puerto
Japan, etc.
Rico, all that. Yeah. But yeah, there's definitely some shade going on, but that's fine. I mean, that's kind of normal for a bear market. It's like crypto's dead, long live crypto. It's just part of the process, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything really interesting here. I do think that like local and state government should try. I mean, obviously the federal government's not helping, but the local and state government should try to set up, areas that foster crypto innovation, blockchain innovation, research on blockchain, right? Because it's clear, at minimum, blockchain is a technology here to stay, right? Just the fact that federal governments want to build CBDCs on private blockchain networks proves that.
No, you're right. It was interesting because the Fortune article was pointing to a Brookings Institute report, which was giving specific results, as you just described, to local leaders. So if you're, the mayor of a major city, or you're a senator in a let's say a significant state that's going to try to attract jobs, how should you think about what happened? And there were some high profile, activities like the newly elected mayor of Miami said he's going to take his compensation in Bitcoin, showing openness to it.
Mhm.
But
They
I mean,
launched Miami Coin in Miami last year, but I
is that
don't think did
right?
so well. But yeah,
Oh
but
my.
they're experiments, right? They're experimenting with new technologies for governance and for their constituents. So very cool.
They're giving it a shot.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk
Um,
about this. What do you think? Should we jump into the Bluesky topic?
yeah, I think the Blue Sky topic is really interesting.
All right. I'll give a little bit of context here and I'll let you jump into some details. So basically, there's an article here on The Verge, which is showing that this new service called Bluesky, which is a spin out of Twitter, had been so successful because of people joining from Twitter, according to the article, that they are temporarily pausing signups. What do you think about this, Ishan? How do you
Yeah, to
you mark?
degraded performance.
Let's see
Uh,
here. Here we go. Performance issues. What's your sense of this whole space right now? These
yeah,
Twitter
I mean,
competitors.
I think this is interesting because Threads launched between last week's pod and this week's pod, and like Thread, everyone is talking about Threads, right? Apparently, I think by today, this morning, they're like 100 million users on Threads, which is wild. What, 110? What did the top article say? I don't
Oh
think
boy,
that's the right.
I'm probably finding the wrong one.
Wait, scroll all the way up.
Sorry, let me go back up the top. Here we go.
Yeah. What is that? Yeah. Twitter traffic is tanking as Meta's Threads at 100 million users. That came out yesterday afternoon. So yeah, that's crazy, right? Like in less than a week, Threads has taken. Now let's see what the engagement actually is after a week. Like I signed up on Threads and I check it like once a day because all the crypto people are not on Threads yet, right? Like a lot of the tech and AI people are not on Threads. So like it almost seems like Threads is going to do something interesting where it will take like the fun and the like whatever the fun stuff happened on Twitter, right? Will go on Threads and like the information and the learning and will stay on Twitter, but Twitter will get a lot smaller, right? So I think it's super cool. I'm really glad to see more competition in the space, but like I think decentralized. So I think social is so hard that decentralized doesn't provide enough. Like the decentralization by itself is not good enough because it's taken. I don't know how many users Blue Sky has. Maybe we can Google it, but like Threads picked up 100 million in 4 days, right? Of course, part of it is like you signed in with Instagram, you like automatically followed your friends if you wanted, so they made it really easy. But like that's the point of social network, right? Like that network, there are compounding network effects. I still haven't signed up for Blue Sky. I don't know anyone on Blue Sky. So, I signed up for Threads. So I think like, I think we talk about decentralized social a lot, but really it's just like social media. I don't think this is where we're like, you know, decentralization is a selling point. Like if you turned it around and said like you own your data, you can choose what ads to see, all of that privacy information. Like your information will never get sold because you're the only one who has access to it, right? Like that could be a selling point, but like a Web2 social media company could also do the same thing and like keep their word, right? Like, and I'm like, obviously with Web3, there's proof that like, your data was not touched, your data was not manipulated or used for purposes that you don't want, or, you can give access to your data for money in return, to be shown ads or whatever. But still, like, I don't know. I'm having trouble seeing where like decentralized social is going to do well. Like something like Threads can come out and, take 100 million users in like 5 days.
Yeah, especially corporations. It seems like, Facebook already has tremendous relationships with large brands. Those brands spend a lot of money with Facebook today, Instagram, and other platforms. They're probably very happy to jump on a new platform like Threads and get it prepped there. I'm sure they could invest the right amount of money to make it successful. But the interesting thing too about social media is that it's almost like there's an unbundling of what it means to be social media, because in some ways Facebook or Instagram might be more private. I just want to share it with a specific group of friends. Twitter, on the other hand, is much more of a public version of social media. And then maybe these new technologies, decentralized social media, are more like social media where you own your data in some sense. And I don't know where, how that will play out, like where people will choose to spend more of their time, depending on their age, their profession, what sends them in different directions. But there's definitely a lot of options right now in this space for people. It's like they use the term sort of like one of those moments of a lot of like activity. Like it's like there's a lot being born, a lot going on right now, and people can choose. But you're right. At the end of the day, it's who you care about following, who you care about interacting with, and what platforms are they on. And that's a heavy gravity to try to move into a new platform.
It's like two things, right? Like it's like I want to follow my friends, and I want to follow like interesting people in the world. And if my friends are on one social media, I'll go join it. And then if people keep doing that, the celebrities will show up, which is what happened on Facebook and Instagram. The other way is that like, everyone just shows up, or like, the celebrity showed up and then everyone showed up. And like, that's kind of what happened on Threads. Like you had like, Steph Curry and the NBA's account and all these people like signing up immediately. Of course, when 100 million people signed up, it seems that everyone signed up, but it didn't start out with like Facebook. They were like, only my friends are there. And then I'm going to like brands and like celebrities showed up. It was like everyone just showed up at the same time because it was like a cultural thing to do. So yeah, sorry, that's the other plan.
Yeah, no, another interesting dimension to this is the censorship aspect. Did you see any of the Twitter files that were released with Rolling Stone editor, Rolling Stone journalist, I think the person's name is Matt Taibbi. So when Elon Musk took...
This happened like last year, right?
Yeah, it started happening late last year and then it kept going earlier this year. And then Matt Taibbi actually testified in front of some Senate committee, giving a recap of how the FBI and other government agencies had a direct relationship to censor certain people on social media, sometimes for reasons that most people might think are well-intentioned, like public health or otherwise, but sometimes for political reasons, which the Republicans were upset about and other, let's say, free speech people were upset about. And in this process of subpoenaing Facebook for similar information, they wanted to find out if the same thing was done. It turns out that Facebook had a very close relationship with the White House. And so there were questions about, who do you want us to limit in the algorithm? Who do you want us to like softly censor in some sense? So again, like, I guess when you have your social media on a privately owned, US based company that's owning that data, most people probably don't care because they're just, want to chat with their friends. They want to find out what their favorite celebrity is doing. But then if there's specifically important information from a public figure or information that they want to find out about, that algorithm is such an important choke point. And I think that was a big part of why Jack Dorsey founded Bluesky, was because he wanted to kind of separate himself from the responsibility that he had to his advertisers, his customers, to have to censor certain content. He wanted to kind of like remove that burden of, like with the Biden laptop, for example, that Jack Dorsey was told by the FBI, you're going to get information about this laptop and you need to push it down, you need to censor it. And that's a lot of weight for a CEO. I feel I feel for him. Well, what would you have done in that situation? How do you feel about that kind of responsibility?
yeah, I don't know. It's hard. I don't know the conversations that took place. I don't know, what was implied, what was threatened, right? Like you never find out these things. Like it's really simple to say like it's a free speech versus a non-free speech debate. And obviously like, we always go on the side of free speech, especially when like it's political and you don't know if it's like, if it's real or not. And it's for like the Hunter Biden thing is like turning into like an entire shit show for the Biden administration, right? Like a lot of those things that were thought to be conspiracy theories are turning out to be true. But I don't know, like, what else was threatened to Jack Dorsey, right? Like, we're never going to know. So I don't know if there's no threat, then I would have, been like, there's no chance that we're going to censor this. But, if they start threatening family, friends, the Twitter business itself, sure, I'm not sure what I would do unless I would have details. But yeah, I think that's why I'm a really big fan of Bluesky. But like at the end of the day, like the fact that, Jack Dorsey's behind Bluesky and hasn't convinced me that I should get it is almost like a failure on their part, like
It's tough.
Zach in releases threads and like I like pre-signed up and I got the notification to download it and I downloaded it whenever I saw the notification. So I think obviously they could do that because I had Instagram on my app and I use Instagram, but like, yeah, I don't know anyone on Bluesky and I feel no compulsion to sign up.
Would you like to see a quick tour of Bluesky?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's
All
funny
right.
because I actually signed up for Farcaster, which is another decentralized social network, because a friend was like, "Hey, I'm on Farcaster. You should check it out." You know, and it
Oh,
looks
yes.
exactly like Twitter. Oh my
It
god,
looks
this looks
exactly
like
like
the old
Twitter.
Twitter. Like without the slick UI.
That's it. It's just people with funny pictures and little comments and stuff. And you got your little
So,
friends. You can follow people.
so for people who are listening, Wes is showing off, I assume, your Bluesky account, and it looks very much like Twitter on the screen. Yeah, it's super cool. But
Sweet. We'll have to go back with a link to the show. So I've just
yeah,
posted on my profile first live post on Bluesky here. So we've marked
are
it
there
in
a lot of
history.
people on Bluesky? How many users does Bluesky have?
That's a really great question. I do not know how to find out how many. It does show how many folks it recommends in my network. Let's see if we can find any other stats here. No, I don't know how to figure this out yet. That's a great
Yeah, I
question,
don't think
though.
there's anything public, because I feel like if it was, they probably. So in April 2023, the Bluesky app generated 166,000 apps downloads from just Android, while iOS devices generated 432,000 downloads. I'm not sure how that like that's. I'm not sure how that's like useful information to me, but basically there were like 600,000 downloads in the month of April of this year, which is not a lot, right? How many people have those converted to users and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's a little bit interesting too because they're all taking very different approaches. Like Farcaster's approach is technically different than Blue Sky's. Blue
Mhm.
Skies is different than Lens Protocol, which is another popular decentralized social media. Some are integrating with blockchain technologies. Some are having nothing to do. Like Blue Sky has nothing to do with blockchain, and I think Farcaster as well. Is that right? It's just a
I actually
standalone
don't know. Yeah.
peer-to-peer
Yeah.
technology, but they're trying to give you some ownership over your personal data within that so you can
Mhm.
kind of move between services as you see fit. So, yeah, it's very early days. We'll see it maybe if some big celebrities move to these services and then actually here's a prediction. If the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, ABC News start quoting comments that people make on Farcaster or Blue Sky or Lens, does that become a moment when they arrive,
Yeah.
when it becomes a primary news source for anything important? Is that what
I
we should look
think
out for?
when somebody has a feature that is really compelling that doesn't exist on social media today, that's when one of these takes off. And if they never come up with a feature, it doesn't. Like for Facebook, right? Remember, like photo tagging was a big deal. Like I could tag my friends in pictures, right? With Instagram, like the filters was a big deal. Like just uploading a picture with the filter to make it look pretty, right? TikTok was video, short form video, which like Instagram and YouTube copied immediately, right? Snapchat was stories. ephemeral stories, right? So like there needs to be something new and novel that's fun. Otherwise, I don't think any of these are going to take off.
All right,
I
CBDC
don't.
payments plus social media. Ishanster. That's what we're going to call it.
Exactly.
But you're right, though. It has to be something unique and novel. So we'll have to see if there's some smart developers that can come up with some creative new applications and new uses
exactly.
of this space.
Yes.
So you shared a really interesting article. I'm going to share the link here on the CoinDesk. I'll let you kind of give the background here.
While Wes is sharing notes there, like, we talked about this a few weeks ago, right? BlackRock submitted to the SEC for a Bitcoin ETF, right? And now Larry Fink, who's the CEO of Bitcoin, the CEO of BlackRock. Oh my God, the CEO of Bitcoin.
He might want to be CEO of Bitcoin.
Yeah, he's like, oh, it could revolutionize finance. Like 5 years too late, buddy. Like good job. That like once it picked up mainstream adoption, he's like, oh, let me see how I can make money from this. So let me start saying great things about crypto. Was it the guy in 2017 who was like, Bitcoin is an index for money laundering?
Yes. Thank you for calling that out, Ishan. Thank you. We don't want to let people go without remembering, because this is a deep history. Bitcoin was started in 2009, and then it wasn't taken seriously for a long time. Yeah. And it was kind of taken seriously, but like, let's say traditional finance leader like Larry Fink, 2017, this is a joke. Warren Buffett famously referred to it as rat poison. Jamie Dimon has always thought of it as a hyped up fraud. But now if you see a person like the head of one of the largest financial institutions in the world publicly supporting a technology, does that mean we're past the bottom of this bull market or this bear market?
Yeah, I think there are a few things here. One, it's great that they've changed their mind, or at least he has changed his mind, right? Like, I mean, that's the sign of like, when you think about like someone who's smart, like most people change their mind as new data comes out, right? Like, or their opinion changes as they get more use cases. Like the Web3 community is very different today than it was in 2017. So that, that's super important. I think that it's become way more mainstream. I also think that, BlackRock wants to figure out how to exploit it to make money. And so now they've turned pro Bitcoin, which is fine for me. It enables more liquidity, more people in the space, right? In general, like I think all of these things are great. But at the same time, like if it's just, remember, it wasn't actually like you weren't holding Bitcoin, right? It was like some sort of like weird thing where it was like an index tracking Bitcoin. Like you remember, I don't remember the technical details, but like it's not that great for like decentralization, I think. If
you mean like, the ETF itself?
The ETF, yeah, exactly.
Well, so there was a lot of controversy around this because there's been 12 different companies over the past, I think, 7 years that have applied for a Bitcoin spot ETF, and they were all denied. Then last year, there was a company that applied for a Bitcoin futures ETF, which is extremely complicated because you're basically, for people that aren't familiar with a futures contract, you're betting on the future value of a product. So you could say, I'm going to take a bet with you, financial institution, that Bitcoin's going to double in price over a certain period of time. And so rather than actually having an ETF that owned a certain amount of Bitcoin, you were buying an ETF, a fund that was just placing bets on your behalf about the future. Extremely speculative, extremely complicated, but that's fine, whatever, they did that. And now there is a bit of debate about this spot ETF where, because it's larger financial institutions, if you buy $100 worth of this Bitcoin ETF, they may only have to maintain $75 worth of that Bitcoin on hand for them because of some regulations around how ETFs are managed. But do you think, is that good or bad for retail?
I mean, I think in general, this is good. Like, obviously, I don't think it's ideal. I would just like to see a Bitcoin ETF where you own Bitcoin, right? But then again, like, what is that? How's that an ETF, right? Like, if 100% of your holdings are, like, if you think about the S&P 500 ETF, and it's like balanced for, all the S&P 500 companies, right? By weight, by market cap. That's an ETF, right? Like, you think about like that, like S&P, like, or NASDAQ, right? Same thing. You think about S&P tech, same thing. They weight by some algorithm on like market cap by tech companies in the S&P 500. And so like, I don't know how these like, how this Bitcoin ETF works exactly. 100% of it is going to be Bitcoin, right? Like I would understand like a crypto ETF where like you're like X% is Bitcoin and X% is Ethereum, right? And yeah.
Yes. No, to your point, there are indexes. There's some really interesting indexes for crypto funds like the DPI index. Have you ever heard of this one, DeFi Pulse Index?
No.
Let me share my screen with you here
Oh, I guess
briefly.
there's
This
a
is
difference between an ETF and an index, right? Like an index can be an ETF. So like that's where I was
correct.
getting confused. Okay.
Correct. Exactly.
But
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was saying like, I think all this is good, right? What are your thoughts?
I think it could be a lightning rod for the space because if you have like, let's say folks that are in retirement or preparing for retirement, 401k accounts, generally it's difficult to get exposure to specific stocks and things. But if you have an IRA account, you might be able to invest in specific stocks and hold it for the long term. And it's historically been very difficult to get exposure to Bitcoin in a retirement account. There's however
Mm-hmm.
many tens of trillions of dollars of assets sitting out there. And if someone says, oh, I'd like to bet on Bitcoin over the long term, they could buy MicroStrategy stock. They could buy Square and other tech companies that are exposed to Bitcoin as sort of a proxy, but they can't buy Bitcoin directly through their retirement account. Now, if you have a Bitcoin ETF that comes into the mix, you can buy basically proxied Bitcoin through your ETF, and it should mimic the price of Bitcoin over a period of time. So if we go into a bull market and all these retirement folks say, oh, I'll put 1% of my portfolio into Bitcoin, that's a lot of potential capital coming into the space, especially in the US here. So I think it's positive for the space. Might be a little bit poetically unjust if BlackRock is the first one or Fidelity are the first companies to get granted this by the
Yeah.
SEC versus after all the other companies that have been waiting to apply for this. But sometimes you have to pay to play, I suppose.
Yeah. And maybe the SEC likes it. Maybe the SEC is like, oh, these are people who said that Bitcoin was stupid and now they believe in it. So there's some merit to it. I don't know. But I could definitely see a world where that was real. So
Yeah. That's how it goes. Well, what'd you think about the interview last week? Pros,
the
cons?
Benji was awesome. I learned so much about like IP NFTs. I learned a lot about decentralized science. I didn't really know what decentralized science was. Like what part is decentralized, right? And actually turns out the entire part is decentralized. Like you can decentralize multiple things. I found getting people to raise money for like diseases that are underfunded because there's not a lot of profits to be made, but like it can make a big impact. Very interesting, like a really good use case of decentralized science. It seems that like the DeCide group has really looked at like what are the problems today in centralized science and like have come up with decentralized science like structures or organizations or whatever to like really solve those problems, which like as we've been talking a lot about, or at least I've been talking a lot about, is like it's about solving problems, not about like, oh, I have this new technology, what can I do with it, right? Like, oh, you have a problem, how do you solve it? And you end up at Web3 or you end up at decentralized. I found him super, super engaging. But yeah, what do you think?
It reminded me a bit of a story when I was growing up. My brother, when I was in fourth grade and he was in first grade, he was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes, which is a scenario where your pancreas just stops producing insulin. You have to take insulin shots. And it was a big change for us as a family because we can't eat the same things we used to eat. We have to kind of change how we travel and keep this insulin around. And for us, that was a very niche community issue. And I remember being very passionate. We would go to these walks, these 5K walks or whatever, to raise funds to invest in research for juvenile diabetes because there just weren't cures at the time. And so Reddit didn't exist. So it wasn't like we could go talk to people, on Reddit. And it was
Kickstarter didn't exist.
Kickstarter didn't exist. Exactly. But it reminded me of like the passion that people have when their life is really, changed by something that's traumatic for them. They really care about it. And I suppose, the idea of decentralized science and tokenization and reducing the friction of getting funding for this science maybe sounds a little high flying and risk taking until you meet these people in these communities and they don't have a lot of other options. And this is a way to potentially help fund more of what they need in terms of their research. So I'm super glad they're taking those chances and giving this a try. Hopefully this can become sort of a sustainable space, and there'll be other competitors, there'll be other, other offerings in the space in the future.
Yeah, I think we didn't have enough time, but one thing I wanted to learn about, like, what have been like the big things in decentralized science that, like, oh, someone's released a research paper or done some cure, like they've gone through clinical trials or whatever. Or like, the way that he described it is like, oh, you find the person who needs it the most and you like, try it on them. Like, how did that work out? Have they released anything that like made a difference? Because it would be great if like the answer is yes. And it would be great if like, over time, like, I don't think decentralized science is going to take over, but like, decentralized science can like opportunistically like come up with this really cool medicine that like, big pharma companies would never fund. Right. So yeah, I thought he was super engaging, learned a lot from those topics. A lot of things I'd never thought about too. There's so much content and things in this world that like, you just never have time to think about some of these things until someone like puts it in front of your face.
It's so true. No, it's interesting to your point about like successes with pharma and those things. Last year, let me see if I can get the date for you. January 30th of this year, VitaDAO, the organization that Benji works for, received venture funding from Pfizer Pharmaceuticals at $4.1 million. This is public information. So yeah, I was shocked. I was like, okay, wow, they see it as a potential maybe avenue for them in the future around drug discovery and other things like that. So it's good to see some big institutions taking a closer look at it too.
And now that you mentioned that, it makes sense. Let someone else take all the risk. And if it works out, then, I mean, not only have you invested some venture capital money, you can just acquire it, right? I mean, right? Like it's like a great bet for Pfizer now that we're talking about it.
That's it. Because if you're Pfizer, maybe your typical drug development pipeline is some professor starts a company, spins out of the university. There's time, there's process with that. Versus if you go the Web3 route, maybe the professor, has their credentials. They open up an offering for their research. People invest. They have their tokens. If you're just reducing friction in that, even outside of university, if you're cutting down the drug development pipeline, maybe it's just on its own sort of a way to grease the skids and get research going faster.
Yeah, exactly. And like and it could be anyone, right? It could be like anyone starting. It could be someone who's studied, like has a PhD in biology. It could be someone who's, postdoctoral research and, like a lot of academia has been filled up. Like there's not a lot of like professor positions open. Right. And so like, this is like a new way of people being able to conduct research without like, let's say like traditional institutional backing. And so like, not only does it open up people to do science that maybe big pharma does not think has a lot of money in it, so therefore they don't fund it. But it also opens up for talented people who like maybe could not have done this earlier because there was no institutional backing, like non-private institutional backing to do it, right? Like R&D labs don't have roles for someone, universities don't have roles for someone, and they want to do this. And so now you can go to, you can create your own marketplace. You're like, hey, I'm trying to solve this problem. Let me go find the people who are having this problem and help me get it and we can all fund it together. And then, maybe I can solve this problem that I'm seeing. And it really, I think one of the things that Benji was talking about is incentives. It really changes incentives because now like someone can go work on a problem that they think is big, but no one else thinks is big. And it could be big in the future. Or you can go solve a problem that like Benji was more talking about, like it's small, but severe and big pharma doesn't care about it. And so it allows for like both types of, problem solving that I think the former was definitely not available before decentralized science.
That's it. Giving them more opportunities, more outlets to do work. I love it. Well, I think that was a huge success. Can you give us any preview on our next guest? Is that possible?
I want to keep it a surprise.
It's a surprise. How good.
I want to keep it a surprise. Maybe
it's a good one.
Viewership. But I will say this, that I think anyone who's listening or watching next week is going to be big. We're going to have an awesome guest. And this person, man, I don't want to ruin anything, but like this person has some really cool views on crypto and how government should be okay, I'll give one spoiler. This person is somehow related to government. So like we're gonna see, we'll hear about like government, and we'll hear about crypto regulation and what this person thinks in terms of like making America the world leader in crypto regulation. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Perfect setup. Thank you. All right. Well, folks have to stay tuned to the Twitter account, DFI Podcast, if they want to get any more spoilers.
Yes, 100%.
Awesome. Well, this was a blast as always, Ishan.
Yes, always a blast.
All right, man. We'll wrap it up here. Have a great week. Talk to you next time.
Bye.